When we brought this project from Miami to Wauchula, because of the beautiful surroundings and we're pretty much in a remote area, we had 5 young orangutans and chimpanzees. Kenya and Noel ran and hugged each other, and then Grub ran over and all 3 hugged, and they were so excited to have this environment. This project started with those 5. Since then, we've grown to have over 40. And we've grown from 15 acres to about 120 acres. Lots of new habitats and enclosures. We've grown, more than we had expected to, but probably not enough because there are more out there that really need care.
I've known Patty Reagan for quite some time, from the days when she first began with her interest in orphan apes.
Hello. It's very kind. Yes, it's very kind.
I've seen her develop over the years in the resources she was able to bring together to create the sanctuary, and suffered with her through that terrible hurricane.
3 hurricanes in 6 weeks. We lost most of our canopy, most of our shade. We actually figured that in the 3 hurricanes we lost over 1,000 trees. Right after the hurricanes, we had an opportunity to suddenly expand because the largest user of great apes in entertainment, in movies, televisions, advertisements, agreed to leave the apes and entertainment business and stop working orangutans and chimpanzees permanently. We agreed to take all of his orangutans and chimpanzees, not only the breeders and the adults, but the young working infants. One significant little fellow at the sanctuary was born 6 weeks before the trainer actually shipped his mother to Florida to the sanctuary. So he arrived on his mother's belly at 6 weeks old. He is the one great ape at the sanctuary that will have been raised by his own mother. Most recently, we've grown again with the addition of 6 new orangutans that have come out of the entertainment business, 3 males and 3 females. The first male to arrive was Harry, and Harry absolutely loves to swing. Sunshine, the oldest of all the orangutans, enjoys spending her days with the youngsters Keegan and Archie. Even though they have the spaciousness of these 30-foot tall, either geodesic domed or the larger habitats, they have an elevated tunnel system so that they can actually get out and walk through the woods, follow the staff around. Good nutrition is very important. They get several produce feedings a day of fresh fruits and vegetables. Today, 20 years later, we're one of 10 sanctuaries in North America that have chimpanzees that are legitimate sanctuaries, and still the only sanctuary for orangutans. And when we started with 5 great ape babies, we rescued 52. We've rescued some pretty sad cases. We have an orangutan that came out of, in fact, she was the last one in a research facility in the United States. When she was only 12 weeks old, she was with her mother at a research lab, and her mother bit off her arms. Actually, she doesn't know what it's like to have arms to locomote around, but the amazing thing, orangutans' main way of locomotion is arm-over-arm swinging through trees. And because Mari doesn't have that locomotion, she has adapted to walking upright. Mari is amazing. One orangutan that is also very special and has special needs is Allie. When she was very young, she was living in a zoo, and she had a condition that resulted in the loss of the use of her legs. While it's not complete paralysis, Allie cannot walk or get around using her legs or her feet, so she goes everywhere with her hands. Just the way Mari has compensated without arms, Allie is compensated without the use of her legs. She really hadn't been around too many males in recent years, but she seemed to really want a companion. We had a young male orangutan named Louie who had been in Hollywood in entertainment. We put them together for an introduction, not knowing how Allie would react to this big adult male, or how Louie would act to one of the first females in his life. When they first met, he was absolutely in love with her. For the past 5 years, they've been wonderful companions. Roger was born in captivity, and he was worked in the circus for quite a long time. And then he was sent to a small kind of shopping center type of attraction where he was housed in a cage with an orangutan, and he was very frightened of the orangutan. We brought them here, and we brought the orangutan also, and that orangutan is Radcliffe. He was born in a zoo, and then they sold him to another small attraction, and he lived in this 10 by 10 chain link cage for many years. When Radcliffe first arrived, he had very little hair on his back and his legs, very little hair on his face. He was kind of bald. His color wasn't good. He looked a bit emaciated. He now has hair growing everywhere. He's a huge guy. He's about 260 pounds, and he just generally looks terrific. One of the most heartbreaking rescues I think we ever had come here was a 45-year-old chimpanzee named Clyde. He spent the first 45 years of his life after he was captured from his mother in Africa in a garage in Ohio as a family pet. When Clyde arrived, he was emaciated, bones were sticking out, he had bed sores everywhere, his skin was almost white, he was unable to really walk very much, he could hardly stand up. He had spent 45 years in a tiny garage cage. I didn't even think he would live more than a couple months. And finally started to eat a little better, to explore our chutes, to walk around the sanctuary. We tried to introduce him to several chimpanzees here, but he was afraid of all of them. And then we thought of our dear, sweet Toddy. So we brought her over and introduced her to Clyde. He at first didn't know what to do. He cried, he screamed. And finally, Toddy's patience and gentleness with him, he came out and just hugged her the second day that they were together. And they were together nearly 5 years. They groomed each other, they shared food, they slept together until the day that Clyde passed away from kidney failure. Clyde embodies what we do at the sanctuary for some of these apes, to take a soul that didn't get to live a chimpanzee life and at least give him a few years of companionship with another chimpanzee and happiness and peace was really a remarkable thing. Knuckles is another little fellow that we took in. He was born in an entertainment compound in California, and he would have been used in the movies, but they discovered early on after he was pulled from his mother, the trainer discovered that he had cerebral palsy. When he was younger, we could take him in with our youngest group of chimpanzees here and play with him, and he loved the companionship with the chimps. Knuckles is not able to go in with the other chimpanzees anymore because they're larger and they're too strong for him. But he has a very special companion at the sanctuary, and that is Toddy. Toddy is a wild-caught chimpanzee from Africa who was used first as a pet, then as a breeder, and then came to our sanctuary 18 years ago. She's gentle with him, and she tolerates him, and he just loves her. 3 new arrivals came to the sanctuary. They ended up in a garage in 5 by 7 foot cages for over a decade. One of the orangutans, 300 pounds, in a tiny little cage. That's Linus, and he was unable to stand up and walk because he'd been atrophied from sitting in that little box for so long. He had 15 to 20 pounds of rotting garbage and concrete hard feces matted in his hair. He couldn't even spread his fingers apart. He shook constantly when he tried to eat, and it took us about 4 days to get him to come out of the night house. This guy had not seen daylight or sunlight for over a decade. A couple weeks after Linus first stepped outside and saw sunlight and daylight, it started to rain, and most of the chimpanzees and orangutans at the sanctuary will run inside. Linus was inside when it started to rain. He ran outside and looked up and let that rain fall on his face. Here's a rainforest animal that has never felt rain before. And now, today, when it's raining, he stays out in the rain. That, to me, is probably the highlight of our work here. The most difficult thing, I think, in the 20 years is losing the apes. For me, the most devastating loss has been the loss of Grub. Grub was amazing. He was our best painter. He was the only chimp I know of that made masks for everybody that visited. And even Jane Goodall was gracious enough to wear his mask that he made for her. It was something unique, I think, to all chimpanzees. I still would love to see them out in an open range habitat, something that would be an acre or two out in our adjoining property where they could run, and we could give them space where they could have larger groups, would give us more space to help others, and that's our vision for the future. It is extremely rewarding when you see lives turned around and you know that you have really made a difference. I first named this organization the Center for Orangutan and Chimpanzee Conservation, and it took me a few years to realize we're really not doing conservation, we're not saving animals in the wild, but we are changing the lives and the world for individual apes. And that helps me to sleep better at night. It makes me feel very gratified and very grateful that I have been able to do this and been here at this time in this place to be part of it. I started this project to try and find a spot where these animals could live with their own species in spacious habitats with good nutrition and pretty much not have to be entertainers or biomedical subjects or cognitive research subjects, just be there to be orangutans or be chimpanzees. Great apes don't belong in captivity, they belong in the wild. Orangutans belong in the rainforests of Borneo and Sumatra. Chimpanzees belong in the wild of Africa. And what we are trying to do and what sanctuaries are trying to provide is the opportunity for these animals to have a place to retire to. They come out of situations where they don't have a future really. To live with their own species, to live in as spacious a habitat as can be afforded, to live with dignity for the rest of their lives. And that is what we're trying to do here.